Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're talking about a place that a lot of people just consider a beautiful, historical park. The perfect spot for a nice Sunday stroll. But the Summer Garden in St. Petersburg, it is far more than just pretty pathways, trees, and fountains. It is a brilliant, totally calculated piece of 18th century geopolitical propaganda. It's basically a political message, literally frozen in marble.
Okay, let's dive right into this. What do ancient Roman gods, a crocodile, and a Swedish lion all have in common? I know, it sounds like the setup to a bizarre joke, right? But these seemingly random, totally disconnected images actually hold the ultimate secret to Peter the Great's ambitions.
Section 1. The Secret Code of the Summer Garden. So here's the thing. Peter the Great wasn't just building some new city on a swamp. He was trying to build a massive European empire, and he needed a garden that would literally eclipse the splendor of Versailles. Just like the French Sun King, the sculptures Peter put in the Summer Garden weren't just art for the sake of art. They represented a super-structured, deeply calculated political program. And honestly, it is mind-blowing how fast he pulled this off. I mean, just 1 year after Russian troops captured the banks of the Never River in 1703, Peter was already ordering fragrant herbs for his new garden. By 1710, foreign envoys were already talking about seeing over 30 statues there. He went straight from the brutal conquest of land during the Great Northern War to this aggressive, super confident cultural flex, which all culminated with the Peace of Nystad in 1721.
Section 2. Peter the Great's marble propaganda. So how exactly did he create this massive marble propaganda machine? Well, Peter definitely wasn't just picking out statues at random. He sent his trusted agents, guys like Yuri Kolografov to Rome and Sava Rogozinski to Venice, with one very clear mission: buy an entire series of sculptures that fit a highly specific, hidden state narrative. And here is the craziest part: the actual decoder ring for this garden literally existed. How did Peter and his inner circle decode all this? Through a book called Cesare Ripa's Iconology. This was a rule book from 1593 that dictated exactly how abstract concepts like virtues, vices, the elements had to be depicted in art. And get this, a 1644 translation of this exact rulebook was kept right inside Peter the Great's personal library. So how did this principle actually work in practice? Basically, a superficial myth would completely conceal a harsh political reality. You might look at a sculpture and just see a classic ancient story, like Apollo and Diana punishing the prideful Niobe by striking down her children with arrows. But if you knew the code, in the context of the Summer Garden, this was actually a direct, unapologetic allegory for Russia ruthlessly destroying the powerful Swedish army. It's like an ancient myth being used as a frontline military briefing. Section 3. Allegories of Victory over Sweden. These garden pathways basically became a giant marble billboard, constantly broadcasting Russian military supremacy. The absolute climax of this whole Victorious series is the stunning monument to the Peace of Nystad, crafted by the Venetian master Pietro Barada. This piece is just packed with speaking details. You've got this figure personifying peace, right? And she's holding a torch, but the flame is pointing downward, which literally means the war is over. Meanwhile, down at their feet, there's this entire geopolitical drama playing out. A Swedish lion is pinned to the ground, looking, frankly, miserable. While right next to it, a Russian eagle proudly spreads its wings, completely ready to soar.
To really cement this triumph, that subdued lion is holding down a shield with its paw, and on it is a very specific Latin inscription. It reads, "Great is the one who gives and the one who receives, but the greatest is God." It's just impartially stating the cold, hard outcome of the Great Northern War. Russia is strong because it dictates the terms, Sweden humbly accepts them, but ultimately, over all these rulers and empires, only God holds absolute power.
Now, what's really interesting about this next piece is how the Statue of Sincerity actually breaks those strict rules from Ripa's rulebook. Instead of using the standard, expected symbols, the sculptor depicted a young girl affectionately and trustingly resting her hand on a lion. Why do that? Well, it was a totally unique visual message signaling that Russia and Sweden could actually, finally, peacefully coexist without just growling at each other all the time. But politics isn't just about fighting external enemies. It's also about domestic governance. As you walk along the avenues, you run into justice wielding a punishing sword and mercy holding a book.
And the absolutely crucial point here is that these aren't just polite suggestions for citizens to be kind. No, in Peter's world, these represent the absolute highest state powers of the monarch himself. It's his unconditional right to execute and his exclusive privilege to pardon.
In fact, there's a super straightforward phrase carved right into the book held by the figure of mercy. It says, "Justice punishes the criminal, but mercy pardons." This was meant to totally cement the dual nature of Peter's authority into the minds of his subjects. He's showing them, look, I am a stern, inevitable judge for traitors, but I'm also a magnanimous, merciful ruler for those who actually deserve forgiveness.
Section 4. Art, Science, and Prosperity.
Still, Peter the Great didn't want to go down in history just as some warlord with a sword in his hand. The theme of the garden actually expands to show off his huge, ambitious vision for a modern, enlightened, and prosperous empire. Just look at Giovanni Bonazza's Cycle of the Day. It is a series that is absolutely loaded with artistic Easter eggs. Every single statue is hiding secrets. Noon isn't your classic youth. It's depicted as a Moor to symbolize the scorching heat. Sunset is an old man. And right at his feet blooms a datura, which is a flower that only opens in the evening. And night? Night hides a brilliant surprise. If you look behind her, right on her marble starry veil, the sculptor actually hid a comet. Okay, and speaking of hidden details on their backs, here is a fact that absolutely blew my mind. Modern restorers were studying the sculptures in this series, and they actually found technological holes drilled right into their backs. It turns out the Italian masters followed the Tsar's description so pedantically that they actually prepared mounts to attach physical wings to the statues. I mean, that is an astonishing level of dedication to fulfilling an order, right? The garden also features all these allegories of peaceful labor, and they're directly connected to the building of the new capital itself. You have architecture leaning on a drafting compass, and navigation holding a compass and a map. And again, there is this incredible tiny detail. On the marble map that navigation is holding, right on the outline of the Scandinavian peninsula, if you look closely, you can spot a tiny human face marking a specific point. That is the exact location where St. Petersburg itself was founded. You'll also find stories of creation and fertility sprinkled throughout, like the myth of the shape-shifting god Vertumnus and the goddess of fruit Pomona. Vertumnus was incredibly persistent. He disguised himself as a farmer, got rejected. Tried again, got rejected, until finally, through a bit of trickery, he transformed into a wise old woman, gave Pomona some advice she actually liked, and convinced her to marry him. For Emperor Peter, this whole story of agricultural abundance was a metaphor. It symbolized the arrival of a well-fed, peaceful, and totally prosperous golden age for his empire after so many long years of war.
Section 5. Saving masterpieces from the elements.
But of course, this triumphant story has a really tragic twist. The sculptures successfully dodged all those Swedish cannonballs, only to come face to face with a much deadlier, relentless enemy, the harsh Russian climate. Take the magnificent Cupid and Psyche group, for example. It was created by one of the great Bernini's own students. The myth tells of how Psyche accidentally spilled a drop of hot oil on the sleeping god of love. Well, this incredibly delicate piece of marble survived much better than the other statues, but purely by luck. For a long time, it was tucked safely inside a protective stone grotto, rather than just standing out in the freezing wind. And that brings us to a number that is honestly just hard to wrap your head around. 300. For 3 entire centuries, the vast majority of these delicate, porous Italian marble statues just stood right out in the open air. They were completely exposed to driving rain, wild temperature swings, heavy snow, and the freezing, piercing winds coming right off the Neva River. And, you know, the everyday weather was just half the problem. St. Petersburg is notorious for its catastrophic floods. During the absolute worst years, we're talking 1777, 1824, and 1924, the waters rose and hurricane-force winds literally uprooted massive, centuries-old trees. Those trees came crashing down directly onto the pathways, knocking these priceless Italian masterpieces right off their pedestals and smashing them to pieces. To finally put a stop to this destruction, an unprecedented rescue operation happened in our modern era. Museum restorers took the original statues, which were super battered by the elements at this point, carefully restored them, and permanently moved them indoors. Today, they are safely preserved inside the halls of St. Michael's Castle. So the pristine statues you see decorating the avenues of the summer garden today, those are actually flawlessly executed modern copies, so they have absolutely nothing to fear from the weather. So what does this all mean for us?
It leaves us with a really intriguing thought. When we walk through these historical gardens and streets today, just kind of skimming our eyes over the art and the building facades, do we actually notice the messages our ancestors left for us? The next time you're walking by a marble lion, or a girl holding a compass, or even just a strange flower in a statue's hand, take a closer look. A hidden history of an entire empire might be unfolding right before your eyes, just waiting 300 years for a careful listener. Thank you so much for diving into this topic with our explainer today, and I'll catch you next time.